Welcome to the Nocturne Gallery channel. Today we're going to be talking about something really interesting, the influence of Japan on the work of Claude Monet, where we try to connect the dots based on the things you're curious about. So yeah, today it's all about Monet, but maybe aside of him you haven't thought as much about this really profound impact Japan had on his art. We've got quite a bit to dig into here, from the things he collected himself, the prints, to how he actually painted, his brushstrokes, even how he designed that famous garden. Our goal really is to figure out how this whole exchange between cultures shaped, well, one of the most famous artists ever, how it pushed him towards seeing things completely differently. Okay, let's get into it. So everyone knows Monet, right? Father of French Impressionism, that whole thing. But maybe less known is that he was this huge admirer of Japanese art. He was part of that trend called Japonism.
Right, Japonism was definitely a thing. But what's really fascinating with Monet is how personal it was for him. It wasn't just a fad. Like, his studio in Giverny reports that he was just packed, like filled with hundreds of Japanese prints. And we know for a fact he owned 231 ukiyo-e prints himself.
Wow, 231. That's a serious collection.
It really is. Ukiyo, those pictures of the floating world, scenes of everyday life, nature, actors from Japan's Edo period.
So he wasn't just like buying souvenirs, he was properly studying them.
Exactly. He was often at the Monet Gallery in Paris, which is a big place for Eastern art. And get this, he apparently called Hiroshige, the Japanese master, a Japanese impressionist.
A Japanese impressionist. That's bold for back then, linking his own movement to this older tradition.
It absolutely is. And it makes you wonder, why? Why did he feel such a connection? Well, Monet actually said it himself later in 1909. He said something like, if you really want to find where my work comes from, look at the old Japanese masters. And he named Hokusai and Hiroshige specifically.
So it wasn't just a passing interest. He saw something fundamental there.
Absolutely. He wasn't just collecting. He was kind of reverse engineering their techniques almost, looking for a new way to see, to break away from the really formal academic art of the time.
And it seems like others in his circle felt it too. His friend, Georges Clemenceau, the future prime minister, he also collected Japanese art.
Yeah, he did. It was definitely in the air in certain circles in Paris.
So was it just part of that trend, or was Monet's connection, deeper somehow?
Well, I think it speaks to the trend, for sure. But with Monet, he didn't just collect, he absorbed it. Having Clemenceau as a friend probably helped, like validating his interest. But Monet was actively trying to weave it into his own painting. It was more like this deep artistic dialogue across time and space for him. He wanted to internalize it.
That makes sense. It's one thing to admire, another to truly integrate. Okay, so his studio was full of these ideas, but then there's his garden at Giverny. He called it his finest masterpiece, right? That seems like where this Japanese inspiration really came alive.
Oh, definitely. Giverny was his personal paradise, you could say. He basically sculpted that landscape. He mixed styles, English, French, Dutch. But the Japanese influence is really strong. It wasn't just about making it pretty. He was literally building the scenes he wanted to paint.
And he planted specific things like Japanese peonies, right, to get that feel.
Yes, peonies, other exotic plants. But the thing everyone recognizes.
The bridge, that green Japanese-style bridge over the Water Lilies.
Exactly. That arched wooden bridge, it's iconic.
Yeah.
And sources do suggest it was probably inspired by Hokusai prints, his pictures of bridges in Japan.
Huh. So he's looking at these prints and then literally building structures from them.
Seems like it. A journalist visited in 1904 and wrote about how Japanese the garden felt. Monet was really curating that whole environment. It was a living composition.
And this wasn't totally out of the blue in France, right? Japanese gardens were becoming popular.
Yeah, that's true. The big world exhibitions in Paris in 1878 and 1889, they had these Japanese pavilions and gardens that got a lot of attention. So Monet was tapping into something current, but taking it to this whole other artistic level.
It's just amazing to think of him shaping his surroundings just to inspire his painting. He's not just finding a landscape, he's kind of engineering it.
It really shows how immersive his process was, doesn't it? It's like he needed to live inside the aesthetic he was painting. The gardening itself was almost part of the art.
Okay, so Japan reshaped his home, his garden, but the real test is the canvas, right? How did all this translate into his actual paintings, the brushstrokes, the subject?
Right, that's the core of it.
Yeah.
Those ukiyo-e prints, they weren't just decorations. For Monet, they were like a new visual rule book. They totally changed how he thought about composition and what was even worth painting.
Yeah.
So for instance, composition. He started using these bold compositional techniques.
Like what specifically?
Well, strong diagonal lines cutting across the picture.
Yeah.
Asymmetrical layouts, which really goes against the Western idea of balance. And weird angles, like looking down from above or tilting the view.
Oh, yeah, I can picture that. Like in Terrace at Saint Adres, that high viewpoint.
Exactly like that. The clear geometry, the way it's structured, it feels very much like some Japanese prints. It's a big break from just centering everything.
Yeah.
And also the subjects. Ukiyo-e showed everyday life in Japan, people by rivers, on bridges, busy streets, festivals, just normal stuff.
Okay.
And that really encouraged Monet and the other Impressionists to look for beauty in their everyday world too. You know, scenes of Paris life, landscapes, people just living. It was a move away from those big, serious historical or mythological paintings the official salon liked. Japanese art kind of gave them permission to paint modern life.
That's a huge shift. But maybe the biggest thing, wasn't it the idea of painting the same thing over and over again, the series?
Oh, absolutely. That idea of seriality. That was a game changer, and it has deep roots in Japan. You look at masters like Hokusai with his 36 views of Mount Fuji, or Hiroshige's 53 stations of the Tokaido. They weren't just painting Mount Fuji once.
Right, they painted it from all different angles, different weather.
Exactly. Different times of day, different seasons. It was about capturing the changing essence of a place, how light and atmosphere transform it. It's about exploring perception itself.
And that directly led Monet to his own series. The Haystacks, the Poplars, Rouen Cathedral, and obviously the Water Lilies, which he painted for decades.
Precisely. He took that Japanese concept of capturing a subject's spirit through multiple views and applied it to light. How light changes everything.
It's like he was scientifically observing light, using the Japanese series idea as a framework.
You could say that. He realized the subject isn't fixed, it's constantly changing. And that serial approach became absolutely central to his work, pushing Impressionism further. Even someone like Cézanne picked up on it for his Mount Sainte-Victoire paintings. Influenced by Monet and Japonism, it spread.
But did anyone back then think, okay, Monet, we get it, you like haystacks. Like, did critics see it as repetitive or maybe even copying the Japanese idea rather than being original?
Oh, I'm sure some did, especially the more traditional critics. They were used to the idea of one big, finished masterpiece. They probably saw it as, yeah, maybe repetitive or just a technical study.
But others saw the innovation.
Right. The more forward-thinking people recognized he was doing something radical. He was exploring light and color and atmosphere with this incredible focus. It was way beyond simple repetition. It was a deep investigation of how we see. And plus, think about the actual motifs from Japanese prints, weeping willows, irises, cherry blossoms, those Japanese bridges.
They ended up in his garden.
And then straight into the Water Lilies paintings. It's all connected. They became part of his artistic DNA, you could say.
And those late water lilies, some people describe them as being almost like scrolls, like the perspective just dissolves.
Yes, that's a really insightful point. In those late works, especially the huge ones, the sense of traditional Western perspective, you know, with a clear horizon and vanishing point, it starts to break down.
How so?
Well, water, reflections, sky, plants, they all kind of merge together. It becomes this immersive field of color and light, almost abstract. It's less like looking through a window and more like being surrounded by the scene.
Like a Japanese scroll that you unroll and it surrounds you.
Exactly. Japanese scrolls often have shifting viewpoints and flattened space. They draw your eye across the surface rather than deep into it. Monet, maybe unconsciously or consciously, taps into that. He's moving beyond the canvas. It's just a frame.
Fascinating. And sometimes he was more direct too, right? Like putting his wife in a kimono.
Oh yeah. Camille Monet in Japanese costume is a very direct nod. Or sometimes it's subtle, like a Japanese fan just sitting on a sofa in another painting.
Right, like in Madame Monet on a sofa.
And even his paintings of the Saint-Lazare train station capturing modern life, the steam, the light, doing it as a series, some have called that an expressive analogy to Japanese prints in its whole approach.
So, this whole deep dive into Japanese art clearly changed Monet fundamentally. Did that influence ever circle back? Was his work appreciated in Japan itself?
It definitely did.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There were some critics at the time who were a bit sniffy, saying things like the success with the Japanese had gone to his head, but overall his work was hugely appreciated in Japan.
Really?
Yes. His version of Japanism, filtered through his Impressionist lens, it really resonated there.
Was there a specific moment when this became clear?
Well, a really significant one was an exhibition in Paris in 1924. It was actually organized to benefit victims of an earthquake catastrophe in Japan. Yeah, and it featured 60 of Monet's paintings. It showed this huge international recognition and also this kind of empathy.
And were Japanese collectors buying his work?
Very much so. A key figure was Kojiro Matsukata. a big industrialist. He bought a lot of Monet's work from all periods, including pieces from the huge Water Lilies decorations, the Grande decoration.
So, for someone like Matsukata, it wasn't just about buying famous European art.
Probably not just that.
Yeah.
It seems like it was also a recognition that Monet, this Western master, had somehow captured or reinterpreted something essential from Japanese aesthetics. That exhibition really solidified Monet's fame in East Asia. His art sort of bridged the cultures.
That's incredible. And there's that touching story about Clemenceau trying to cheer him up near the end of his life.
Oh yeah, that's quite moving. In 1923, Monet was apparently quite depressed. His eyesight was failing. And Clemenceau tried to organize a trip to Japan for him.
But he couldn't go.
No, he was too frail. So instead, Clemenceau arranged for him to visit a Japanese garden in France, like bringing a little bit of that inspiration to him when he couldn't travel. It just shows how deep that connection was for Monet, personally and emotionally.
It really does. It wasn't just about art history, it was woven into his life.
Absolutely. And it makes you think, doesn't it, how an artist's deep dive into another culture can just ripple outwards, shaping their work, their legacy, and creating this ongoing conversation across borders and time.
What a journey we've been on, seriously, from him just collecting those prints.
Hundreds of them.
Right, to building that bridge in his garden and then completely transforming how he painted the compositions, the subjects, the whole idea of painting in series. Japan was just constantly there.
It really was.
Yeah.
Japanism for Monet, it wasn't just a phase or borrowing a few cool motifs. It was like a fundamental force. It shaped how he saw the world, how he built his garden, and how he pioneered a new way of painting that led to his most famous, most monumental works. It changed everything.
So what's the takeaway for you listening? I think Monet's story is just this amazing example of how looking outside your own world, getting inspired by something completely different, can spark something totally new and revolutionary.
Yeah, it shows that genius isn't always about pure invention from nothing. Sometimes it's about making connections others don't see.
So maybe think about it. What happens if you explore a culture, an idea, an art form that's totally unfamiliar? Could it unlock new ways of seeing or creating in your own life? Just like the art of Japan opened up a whole new universe for Claude Monet, what unexpected inspiration might be out there waiting to transform your perspective? Something to think about.